Scoodly doodly doo, it's time for another Welch review. Scoodly doodly doo doo. Evening, gang! Welcome to another episode of the Welch Review.
And yeah, man. So we're your hosts, Sam and Stefan, and today we are going to be going over The Hole in the Ground, which is an Irish film. You don't hear a lot about Ireland, at least in the movie business. This is kind of cool.
Especially like a movie that was like shot, written, produced, and directed in like homegrown Ireland.
Would you actually have to write down about this today? Because all of these people are probably, not all of them, but a lot of them are kind of like nobodies as far as America's concerned.
That's true. But you know, you might be surprised. You never know.
There's one or two.
Someone out there knows who some of these people are.
Well, I hope most of them know who Jorah Mormont's dad is, but keep going.
That's the most important. So, The Hole in the Ground stars Sienna Kerslake as Sarah. She's our main character. You might know her from Can't Cope, Won't Cope, which is a TV show. Smother, My Salinger Year, which was a movie that focuses on the publishers who handled Salinger, the guy who wrote The Catcher in the Rye, J.D. Salinger. There's books, published those. And Bollywater. I have seen none of her work, but I saw this, and we'll talk about her performance later.
We have seen all of one of her work.
James Quinn Markey, right, who plays the kid Chris.
Yeah.
He plays young Ivar.
Ivar the Boneless?
In Vikings, yeah. He played little wee Ivar.
Wow, he has a better record than the actual star of the
show. Yeah. So if you're a fan of Vikings, that's excellent.
Yeah.
Then you have Katie Uotinen as Noreen, right, who is that crazy lady.
Yeah.
She was in the movie Dark Crimes with Jim Carrey. She did a voice in Wolfenstein 2, The New Colossus.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
She was the voice of Rita. Or Ritra. And then
something German.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And then you had David Crawley, who played Chris's teacher. And he was in The Professor and the Madman, the short-lived TV show Krypton, right, which is about, like, Superman's house and his great-grandfather. It was on Sci-Fi. It was doomed to fail. But, anyway... he was also in the show, or movie, I'm not positive, called Red Rock. Then you have Simone, or Simon, it's Simone, it's a woman. Simone Kirby as Louise, and she's in the HBO show His Dark Materials.
That's her boss homie, right? Like, her boss, who is also her homie.
Who runs, like, the thrift shop?
Yeah, that she works at.
Exactly, I like that, that's my boss homie.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she's in HBO's His Dark Materials, Peaky Blinders.
That's another good show.
And Alice Through the Looking Glass, which I hear is a subpar sequel to Alice in Wonderland with Johnny Depp.
But yeah, dude, good for her. She's also one of the most acclaimed people in the show.
So, like, there are people. You also have Steve Wall, who played Rob. I'm sure he was one of the dinner guest dudes.
Okay.
He had a small thing in The Witcher. He played Boholt. He was on the HBO show Warrior. He played Krisham. And he was also in Vikings. He played Uncle Einar.
Okay.
Uncle Einar. And he's in Raised by Wolves. He plays Ambrose.
Raised by Wolves.
That one you watched in Crazy Travis.
Ambrose. I don't even remember Ambrose.
So maybe it's the smaller one. Then you have Eoin Mackin as Jay. And he was in the show Stumptown that recently got canceled. The movie The Forest. Resident Evil, The Final Chapter, and the sci-fi show Night Flyers. Then you have Sarah Hanley as Lil. This was her first feature film. You have Andrew Bennett as the Doctor. He was in the narrator of the biopic Angela's Ashes, which is based on the biography of Frank McCourt, of him growing up in Ireland and his family and the travesties he went on to become the man he is. It's a good book. But it's a horrible book to read because it makes you so sad.
I haven't seen it.
You're missing tears. That's what you're missing.
Good. It's like Grave of the Fireflies.
Exactly. He's also in The Bachelor Weekend and This Is My Father. You have James Cosmo as Des. Now, James Cosmo is the guy who played Jorah Mormont in Game of Thrones. Jeor, sorry.
The 998th Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, because John's the 999th.
998th. He was also in Braveheart. He played, like, one of the homies.
Okay.
The guy who had to get, like, when he shot with an arrow and then they cauterized the wound.
What? He plays that dude's dad?
Yeah, he plays that.
That's awesome.
Dad. So he's in Braveheart, Game of Thrones. He's also in Highlander, Troy.
I remember him in Troy.
And then this was written by Lee Cronin. This is his first feature film. He has written some short films and directed Ghost Train, Minutes Past Midnight, and Billy and Chuck. This was also written by Stephen Shields, who worked on Zombie Bashers, Republic of Telly, and Huntin'. And as I said, this is directed by Lee Cronin, and what's cool about this is Lee Cronin, based off of this film, Sam Raimi, director of the original Spider-Man trilogy, director of Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness, has handpicked him to direct the next installment of the revamped Evil Dead franchise, called The Evil Dead Rise. So he was handpicked by Sam Raimi. He previously worked with Sam Raimi in a Quibi show that Quibi doesn't exist anymore. It was one of these new platforms, but it went under. But it was called 50 States of Fright, and basically the premise of the show was each episode was a different horror story or mythology of horror from the 50 states of the United States.
Nice.
So Lee Cronin worked with him on that, which I'm guessing Sam Raimi saw this, was like, I like you. You fit my aesthetic. Had him do some episodes, and then he's like, Evil Dead. Yeah. So that's Who's Who, some fun backup.
Alright, a little bit of plot. So this movie pulls on a lot of like Irish mythology, right? So basically in Ireland there's like the whole idea of like the forest people or the fae, and the forest people sometimes are like, see that baby? I want that baby. And then they steal your baby and they replace it with a fake. And a lot of the times it's like a log that's enchanted. And then that...
Trick.
Yeah, trick. You guys are stupid, you won't notice. And then they don't. So anyways, then eventually that log turns back into a log and you're like, oh, where's my baby? So that's actually what a lot of like old elf mythology is based off of. Those myths.
Yeah.
And this pulls from that a lot, right? It doesn't make your baby a log, but what happens is, in this film, you have a mother and her child who move out to like the country of Ireland, right? Like they're in the country, but they move out to like the countryside. Yeah. And there's like some really dense woods behind them. And one day, this kid's like, hey, you said Dad was gonna show up eventually? Like, where's Dad? You're a liar. And then he runs into the woods, and his mom goes after him, and she finds a giant hole in the ground that looks like a sarlacc pit from Star Wars, right? It's kind of like breathing and like spitting up dirt. And then the kid, who she just heard screaming in the woods, just like appears behind her and is like, Mommy? Mommy? And she's like, oh, hey, I'm glad we found you. So anyway, she takes him back to the house, and they live kind of happily for a little bit. But she starts noticing like some oddities with the kid, right? Like he, for one, is always hungry, even though before he like almost never ate, right? He uses Parmesan cheese now, which he hated before. He doesn't remember how to play their favorite game that they used to play with each other, which basically they make weird faces at each other. And he's like kind of into spiders in like weird ways. And before he hated spiders. So slowly she's starting to realize like, hey, this might not be my son. Also, the reason why the dad never shows up is because there's like a really high chance that he used to beat his wife. So she, and probably the kid too, so she took the kid and ditched, right?
Yeah.
So that's why she's out in the countryside. But also concurrently, while she's starting to realize like, hey, my kid's kind of weird, like what's going on, this isn't him. Also he's making friends easily, which he had no friends before, and he hated all the kids in his school. Maybe not all of them, but he became friends with the bully, who was bullying him. So anyways, something else that's happening is there's an old lady who lives nearby who kind of just walks around and seems like mortified all the time. And basically, she realized like 20 years ago, 30, 40 years ago maybe, they don't give us an exact time, that her child was a little weird too, right? And these are neighbors, so like they live close by, so they're neighboring the same woods. So she realizes that her child isn't the same, but then her child winds up dying, and it's definitely heavily related to his family killing the child, but they don't exactly explain. Well, they do explain, but I'm going to leave that for you for later. So anyways, you have a history in this area of children being suspected to be switched, at least by some of the crazier people in the society. And additionally, you have the mother noticing a whole bunch of these different, not idiosyncrasies, inconsistencies piling up with her own child. And it eventually gets to a point where she too realizes, like, hey, this kid might not be mine. And then the movie switches pace from like a suspense kind of like mystery film to like, hey, let's get my frickin' kid back sort of film. And that's kind of a synopsis of the plot without hopefully giving away the whole kit and caboodle. But it is very good. The actors are pretty good. Are there any actors that stood out to you?
Well, I think the two main cast, like James Quinn Markey as Chris and Sienna Kerslak as Sarah, they played, mom and son, right? Like the mother worried about her kid, right?
Yeah.
Might not be his. I think they did a really good job acting off of each other. Hopefully, this starring venture brings more stuff for Sienna, right? Like opens more markets up. Like I hope as Lee Cronin moves up the ladder, he takes some of the people who helped get him there. So, she did good. I expect more things to come. Like the whole, like, parents, I think, just speaking from our experience, they're invested in you. They want to make sure you're okay. They want to check on you. And she conveys that, right?
Yeah.
Like, you believe, like, she's like, yo, that's really my kid. She does a really good job, especially where, as well as emotionally in her face showing, like, yeah, I don't quite buy into that, to then going full, like, I buy into that.
Yeah, and, like, if she was bad at portraying, like, that she cared about her kid, the whole movie would kind of fall apart, right?
Yeah.
If she didn't give a damn about her kid, then, like, there'd just be no progress, and, you'd never find out.
But I guess what I'm saying is, if that wasn't taken as seriously, right?
But that's what I mean,
Yeah.
right? Like, the movie would literally fall apart if she didn't do a good job portraying how much she cared about her fake son.
Yeah.
And by fake son, I mean, she's an actress. It's not her actual son.
And it was nice seeing, like, little Ivar not be evil.
Yes.
Well,
not murder children.
yeah,
for no reason.
not murder children and, like, giggle, but, like, he did a really job being creepy.
Yeah.
So I'm sure he'll play some other, like, twisted child role.
Yeah, it's kind of a shtick now, isn't it?
Like, it just seems that way. Like, oh.
Yeah, because Ivar was an evil child,
Yeah.
and now he's playing, like, possibly an evil child. Can't say everything. But yeah, so yeah, he does a very good job. I very much appreciate that Cosmo dude.
Yeah, dude. James Cosmo as Dez.
Yeah. I love James Cosmo. Every single film he's in, he's like my favorite character in said show for as long as he's on screen. Like in Braveheart, he steals the show every second he's on screen. In Game of Thrones, he's just like the coolest character. And in this one, like, he is like visibly in so much pain, right? Like, just as a character, like, he's in so much pain, and what little peace he's found becomes undermined throughout the film, and you can see, like, it all just, like, rush back into his character, like, in the span of a couple of seconds.
Like that specific scene where, like, she comes to him with a camera.
With a camera
And,
talk
like,
about...
yeah, like that, like you said, he's not in the movie for, like, the longest amount of time, but every time he's there, he's in the room.
Yeah, like, he's just a very good actor, and there's no two ways about it. Like, there's no arguing that he's just like a gem of an actor.
And you just get excited seeing him. You're like, oh, 998th Commander of the Night's Watch, yes!
You died in one show and got shot with an arrow in another one and you shrugged it off. You're glad you're back, Cosmo.
You know, but really, he adds a quiet gravitas to the movie.
Yeah.
I would say even the woman who played Noreen, right? Katie Utinen? Outinen? My apologies for mispronouncing your name. She did a great job playing a mother in distress.
Yeah.
Right? Or someone who's experienced grief and tragedy and hasn't, like, let it consume them.
Wait, what? No, it was totally consumed.
That's what I just said. Who
let
tragedy
let it
grief
consume them.
totally
I thought that you
consume
said
them.
hasn't.
No,
Yeah, sorry.
like totally
That's my fault.
consumed them.
Yeah.
Like she did a really good job,
Yeah,
like
she's
showing
just
what
like-
can happen when like no one believes you. You're also in pain. You know, you're not sure how to move on.
Yeah, she's just like broken and crazy and nobody
Yeah.
believes her.
She reminds me kind of like the living embodiment though of like the crazy cat lady from The Simpsons.
That's exactly it, except instead of being a crazy cat lady, like, it would be like if the crazy cat lady had a child and then thought that cats possessed her child, so she kidnapped every cat she could find, and then when she figured out that this cat hadn't possessed my child, that's when she'd throw them at you.
Yes.
Yeah.
She's like the 9 lives or 9 children this cat has possessed.
That's not where I was going, but I like it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But, you know what's crazy is how you mentioned, like, they neighbor the woods, and it's like, they just seem like, yeah, it's a thing. Like, because when they talk about...
in Neighbor of the Woods.
I guess so, but then... I don't know, man, I feel like they should be doing more because of that, like, huge, like, crater that killed the dinosaurs whole.
The Earth Sphincter? Yeah. Yeah, so I feel like a lot of people in town don't know about the giant Earth hole. And the giant Earth hole is like a serious problem, right? Like it's doing bad things. It looks evil. Like I'm sure none of you have ever experienced this, but like if you went outside and you looked at the ground, you saw a hole, and you're like, that hole's evil. That's what the Earth Sphincter looks like.
And I guess even with saying that, right? Because seeing that is a feat, right? You know what I mean? Like it's a big centerpiece, but they don't focus on it nearly as much, right? The shots that do are like on one hand.
Yeah,
how many shots deal with it?
And like even after the lady finds it, right? She finds her son. That's fine. She doesn't like mention it to anybody, right?
Yeah.
She's like, oh yeah, that's normal. This is Ireland. I'm going home now. Like, she doesn't say, like, hey, the Earth is, like, churning it. Like, I would be telling people about it. Because it's weird. You know?
Yeah, and especially what she ends up, encountering. It's like,
well, I feel like she probably tells people. Oh, no, she doesn't.
No.
Alright. Yeah. Oh, that's another good side note. Not to talk about it, but, like, most of the film, right, takes place in, like, big open spaces or in a creepy old house.
Yeah.
But when she starts to like go and try to find Chris, or at least she thinks that she can go and find Chris.
Are you talking about like?
Well, it gets super claustrophobic, right?
Oh, okay. So
like,
toward the end.
Toward the end, it becomes like a claustrophobic kind of like
the descent.
Super like. I don't know about scary, but yeah, no, scary. It gets claustrophobic and scary in a way that the rest of the movie just doesn't present. So it does like a lot of things. Like again, most of the horror in the story is like unraveling the mystery of what's going on with her child, but it also has some more standard tropes, right? Like at one point she's in the darkness at nighttime in the woods.
Yeah.
And they do that very well. At another point, she's in this claustrophobic situation with some dangerous individuals, and the film does that very well. So there's never like a point like that I would say is like overwhelmingly terrifying, but there's never a point where the horror isn't well done, right? Like it's decently scary throughout the whole thing. I wouldn't say that this is something you're going to pee your pants over, but if you have a child, you're probably going to be upset.
No doubt. It's going to make you want to grip them a little tighter. It makes me kind of understand why Mom was like, hold this carriage or you'll be kidnapped if you let go.
Yeah, and it was really weird because why were we in the woods with a carriage near an earth sphincter? I don't know.
Yeah.
But
this kid clearly didn't have that kind of parents.
he didn't have that kind of carriage. If he had a carriage, he wouldn't have been kidnapped. If he did get kidnapped.
Right. I guess real quick, another thing I think they do well, you mentioned briefly, like, where the things are filmed, and they use the set pieces, I think, very well.
Yeah.
Right? Like, they use the background, the setting, extremely well. They come back to it. They make you, the viewer, feel familiar.
I definitely think a lot of the time they do. And they foreshadow different locations before they ever use them, like, significantly. For example, there's a whole big scene that happens in the basement. Well, one of the first scenes you see is in the basement. And they don't use the basement for a large portion of the film, but they get you prepared for that space preemptively. And I think that's the most obvious example of that. I mean, besides Earth Sphincter, but they only use that a couple of times too.
Well, yeah. I mean, at some point, like, oh, you see it. Like, so that's what's going to end up.
Yeah, like that's the evil thing in the film,
right?
Or at least one of them.
So, no, they do a very good job. Like, hey, here's a little breadcrumb. Here's a little breadcrumb.
Here's a big ass breadcrumb.
Right.
We're gonna come back.
You go loop to loop and come back and cross that path.
Yeah. So they do. You're right. They do a fantastic job, hinting at different spaces that are going to be occupied and are going to be significant to the film. They do a very good job in that same regard, dropping breadcrumbs for different things that the kid was into beforehand.
Yeah.
That he is now wasn't into beforehand, I should say, and is now like either 180 or doesn't remember, or I wouldn't say afraid of. I don't think that there's anything that he was into before that he stops being into.
Well, I mean, the game, right? Like,
well, the game he just doesn't remember.
But I think, again, this touches back to what you said earlier. Like, if that relationship didn't feel real, then the whole movie would fail.
Exactly.
You know?
Yep.
So, at the very heart of it, while it is a nice slice of Irish nightmare, it's a love story between a mother and her son.
We should show this to Louise and be like, hey, is this what Ireland looks like?
Alright.
You ever find one of these in the woods?
Yeah, do you mess with the Fae?
Yeah.
We might have to you know what? I don't know, man. That might be scary. She probably's got some good stuff. We'll have to talk to her.
Anyways, really, really good film. It's cool to see some like really good Irish horror coming out, and just like a good film overall. It's not. It doesn't have any like really bad horror tropes. Like, it doesn't go with jump scares. It just like kind of does its whole thing the whole time.
Like, right? It naturally progresses into like scary, what the hell, scary, you know. Yeah.
You're in a hole.
You should know right then. All right, this ain't gonna end well.
Yeah, yeah.
But again, it's very good. Like Sam said, it's a bit of a hidden gem. So if you see it, definitely pick it up. If you can rent it on Amazon or YouTube, it is worth your time, especially if you're interested in seeing the work of the gentleman who is to helm the next Evil Dead movie. Yeah, right. That's sitting in
a ship. That's not how you drive a ship. But anyways,
it might be. We don't have a boat.
We don't have a boat.
No.
Anyways, this has been the Welch Review. Check out The Hole in the Ground.
It tells you what it's about in the title. There's nothing facetious or hidden about it.
They say the hole in the ground. They show you the hole in the ground. Eventually, they go in the hole in the ground.
All you need to know from watching this is, 1, if you're in Ireland, it's probably beautiful. 2, don't mess with big holes in the ground. Just don't do it. And hold your kids.
And 4, if you think that your child might have been replaced, buy some mirrors.
Buy some mirrors.
Yeah.
Until next time, this has been the Welch Review.